Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Hello. Hi. Thanks for joining. Good morning. Hi, Mike. Thanks for joining. Let's wait a few more minutes. I got in 10 minutes in advance to make sure everything is working fine. I don't know if you guys know this, but I did a live back in May, 2 months ago, almost. And hi, Theodora. Thanks for joining. Good morning. I did a live back in May and I had some technical problems with my YouTube live. And that's why now I make sure I join 10 minutes in advance to make sure everything is good with the sound, with the internet, with the screen sharing and everything. So let's wait a few more minutes for everyone to join. God bless you, dear sir. God bless you. Greetings from UK. Ah, that's so cool. Thank you for joining, guys. But based in PL, is it Poland? I guess Poland. Poland, yes, great. Excited for this live. This is gonna be the third live that we're doing this June. So we've done two live masterclasses, and the whole aim of today is to have a quick recap of the previous two masterclasses, and then we're gonna look at some reflections of soap and skincare making, and we're gonna have a live Q&A. So we're gonna talk about, let's say, the biggest learnings in soap making, the biggest tips and tricks that I've learned throughout my soap making journey, and some of the most important learnings that I have had. Greetings from Trinidad and Tobago. Hi, Janelle. Thank you for joining. So where are you guys, where are the rest watching this live from? Write down in the comments. And let's wait a few more minutes and then we start. Excited for this. Canada, yes. Rome, Roma. Perfect. Michigan, amazing. As always, we have people from all around the world. And I'm particularly interested in that because soap making is also basically influenced by location. Why is that? Because in certain locations, you have access to different oils, for example. I know that in the Philippines, rice bran oil is very popular and olive oil is not popular at all because it's quite expensive. Then in certain countries, you have access to certain essential oils, for example, that are more exotic. And perhaps in other countries, they are not that easily accessible. And of course, again, certain ingredients are more expensive in certain countries. Like I like to use olive oil. I love using olive oil for a lot of reasons. But I've also met a lot of people who don't use olive oil at all because in their country, olive oil is considered very, very expensive. So they're always looking for alternatives. So it's really interesting to have people who learn soap making from many different countries because you can see how soap and skincare making is actually influenced by location. Hello from City, USA. So let's wait 4 more minutes and then we start, because initially the Start time is 4 o'clock, or at least 4 o'clock. It's where I am right now. But I always get in a bit earlier to make sure everything is working perfectly fine. And how is the weather where you are right now? Here, the weather is actually perfect. It's 25 degrees Celsius. It's quite warm. Yesterday, I was swimming almost all day long. So it's proper summer weather. This is a carrot juice soap made instead of lye water. I've replaced the lye water with carrot juice. You have to freeze it first, and it makes an amazing soap that leads to this beautiful color right here. 35 degrees, wow. Rome is very, very warm. So is Greece, where I'm from. Athens is really warm during that period of time. Okay, 2 more minutes and then we start. Write down, what is the last soap you made? I want to know what is the last soap you've made lately. Write down in the comments. Perfect. Very excited for this. June 21st. I made this soap bar using your formula. Essential oil blend, lychea, lime, teeny bit of patchouli. That's a great combination. Lychea and lime, they're great essential oils for the dishes because you want something citrusy, and mint also works perfectly well. Bergamot also works perfectly well. Sweet orange essential oil works well. Geranium actually works well because geranium is both floral, but it's also very citrusy. So geranium essential oil could work well for the dishes as well. And tiny bit of patchouli works well as well. So that's really nice, Theodora. I made your coconut dish soap. Oh, 2 people in a row made my coconut dish soap. It overheated and bubbled, but I love. Wow, this is very typical for coconut oil, actually. So what you have to do in this case, Janelle, is that you have to basically not insulate it at all because coconut oil tends to overheat. It tends to crack. It, even if you mix your coconut oil and lye solution at a high temperature, you could even get the so-called volcano effect. So you have to mix at low temperatures. Once you pour it into the mold, do not insulate. And I also like to put the coconut shell inside the fridge for approximately 1 to 2 hours to make sure I don't get any overheating. This is because coconut oil dish soap is a special case. And that's basically the troubleshooting so that it doesn't overheat next time. Yesterday I did 2 batches, 100% olive oil and lard base 55% with oat flour and turmeric. Great. So that's 100% olive oil. If it's cold processed, then it needs minimum 6 months of curing, actually. So you need to cure it for a long time. And lard 55%, you just cure it for 4 to 6 weeks or so, and that will be just fine. I was wondering what effects the weather might have on soap making. It gets hot and humid here in Michigan during the summer, but cold and dry during the winter. Yes, that's a really good question. So I always suggest people to cure their soaps in a dry and slightly cool place, and away from the sun as well, because depending on what colorants you use, sunlight can degrade certain colorants. So carrot juice, for example, is an amazing colorant, but if you leave it next to sunlight, it will be degraded. And then have it somewhere as dry as possible, so not in your bathroom, for example, and somewhere where there is a bit of airflow. And then everything should work fine. Good afternoon, Carmen. Good morning from Toronto. Hi from Connecticut. Next time I'll freeze the coconut balls. You don't need to freeze them. You just need to put them in the fridge. So you just need to put in the fridge the coconut shell together with a soap butter. Once you put your soap inside the coconut shell, just place it in the fridge for 1.5 hours, and that will do the work. Cool. So thank you again for coming to the last and final masterclass of these 3 masterclass series. Just a quick note here: who was here in the last 2 lives, and who is here for the first time? Just write in the comments who was here in the last 2 lives and who is here for the first time. And don't worry if you're here for the first time. It's totally fine, because we're going to have a quick recap of the 2 last master classes we did. First time, cool. I was at the last 2 lives. I remember, Carmen. Thank you so much. I was here last time. Great. First timer here. I was at the last live. Yes. Perfect. That's totally fine. So, hi, Nico. Yasu Nico. I was here for all 3. I wouldn't miss it. Perfect. Amazing. Perfect, guys. It's totally fine. So some people were here, some people it's their first time in this live. So I'm going to have a quick recap anyways of what we talked about last time. What were the biggest learnings from the last 2 times? And then we're going to move to today's live, where today's live, it's I called it 31 reflections, because as you know, I'm turning 31 years old in 3 days, and this live has to do with the 31. I tried to put the 31 biggest soap making lessons that I've had during those years of soap and skincare making, with the aim to inspire you, and with the aim to add value to you today. So let's go ahead and look at the recap from the last 2 times. So as you know, I've been posting on TikTok for the past 1 year, and I've been posting on YouTube for the past 6 months, basically, since January. And I've noticed also through communicating with all of you through comments and emails, through my physical workshops, I've noticed that people have usually the same challenges and pain points that fall into those 3 categories that I'm showing here. So category number 1 is oil selection overwhelm. Basically, when you have when you start making soap and you have like hundreds of different options, you don't know what to choose, and you end up buying so many different oils and wasting a lot of money in oils that do not really add a lot of value to your soap, in oils that you might actually never really use. You might just use once, see that it actually doesn't really work, and then basically keep it in the shelf. And this is quite important because, as we talked about last time, you don't need 100 oils to make soap. You just basically need 4 oils, and with those 4 oils, you can make any soap you want. And as I've shown you last time, I received a message recently from one of you who told me that they just started soap making and they made one of the sensitive skin soaps, but at the same time, they actually went online and spent $1,500 for crazy stuff, as they call it. So they spent $1,500 in their first month of soap making to buy oils and different ingredients. So I found that really, really expensive. And of course, this is very typical. This is what happens when you get, when you're a beginner and you don't know what to do. So that's pain point number 1. Pain point number 2 is everything on scent. And scent is very important. It's not only how to make your scent more long lasting, which is something that a lot of people struggle with, that their soap smells amazing at first and then it stops smelling after 2 to 3 weeks. But it's also, for example, which essential oils should I blend together? Which essential oils go well together? Why do I add lavender as a heart note? Why do I add patchouli as a base note? What if I add vetiver? Vetiver is a more unique essential oil and it doesn't really go well with other essential oils. So it's quite unique in that sense with what you combine it with. And apart from that, what essential oils and what fragrance oils cause trace acceleration, meaning that your soap butter solidifies so fast that you don't have time to pour it into the mold. And also, what's the difference between essential oils and fragrance oils? So all of this is basically on the scent pain point. And number 3 has to do with additives and troubleshooting, because it's one thing to make a simple soap with olive oil and coconut oil. It's a different thing to make a soap that has carrot juice or coconut milk instead of lye water, a soap that has honey, a soap that has different additives that might accelerate trace, or that might, as we saw, that might overheat your soap butter, or certain additives that you must add, for example, in a dish soap. Some people, me as well, like to add citric acid to avoid soap scum. And there is the right way to add citric acid because citric acid reacts with sodium hydroxide, and you have to make sure you add some extra sodium hydroxide because of the citric acid you add in your soap. So all of these fall into the category of additives and troubleshooting. And troubleshooting has to do also with mixing, with temperature. What do you do when you see that your soap butter starts going bad and you have to troubleshoot right on the spot, and so on. And a little bit about me. I guess some of you have already seen this, but this is just for the new people here. My love for soap making started when I was 18 years old, back in 2013. And basically, I was a freshman in the Chemical Engineering University of Athens. And there I had an organic chemistry course, and I fell in love with saponification. So it was saponification reaction that made me fall in love with soap making in the first place. It was not actually a soap itself. I was the type of dude that used to wash with all-in-one shampoo and conditioner and body wash and whatever. But it wasn't until I saw the saponification reaction that I fell in love with it. And then I started looking more into the science of soap making, formulation, and the chemistry behind it. So that's how I fell in love with it for the first time. And just to show you here very quickly, I've created a simple animation for saponification that really makes it easy to understand it. This is because I hear a lot of people saying that soap making involves the knowledge of chemistry, but in reality, you don't need a chemistry degree to understand saponification and soap making. So this is basically how it looks like. It's very simple. Every oil you have at home, coconut oil, shea butter, beef tallow, olive oil, castor oil, whatever you have at home, in reality looks like this. So it has glycerin, and you all know glycerin. Glycerin is one of the most popular ingredients in skincare. Glycerin is a byproduct of saponification. Glycerin is a humectant, meaning that it traps moisture into the skin, and it really protects the skin and makes it very moisturizing. It makes the soap very moisturizing. So the glycerin is attached to 3 fatty acids, and those fatty acids can be, for example, oleic acid when you work with olive oil. It can be lauric acid when you work with coconut oil, stearic acid when you work with shea butter, and so on. So then when sodium hydroxide comes, sodium hydroxide is lye. It's basically sodium and hydroxide, and the hydroxyl group, what we call here, is very, very reactive, is very, very eager to basically react with something, and it attacks this bond right here. It breaks the bond, and that's how you get soap and glycerin, basically. That's why basically soap making, the saponification reaction, leads to both soap and glycerin at the same time. So let me just go back to the presentation here. Cool. And of course, my whole aim with this channel is to basically not only show you how to copy recipes without understanding them, but how to design your own recipes based on your own goals. Basically, how to go from type 1 soap maker who just copies recipes that they see online to type 2 soap maker that designs their own recipes based on their own goals. So let's look at the recap from the last 2 workshops. So we talked about saponification. We saw saponification in detail. What is saponification? What are the products of saponification? We talked about fatty acid profile, mainly what fatty acids does each oil, like coconut oil, olive oil, contain, and how each of them lead to different properties. How oleic acid in olive oil leads to conditioning, how lauric acid in coconut oil leads to cleansiness and bubbles. So olive oil equals conditioning, coconut oil equals cleansiness, shea butter, beef tallow equals creaminess, castor oil equals thickness and richness. Then we talked about how to choose the right oils for your soap, and this has to do with the intention, with the quality that you want your soap to be. So if you want a normal soap bar, you will use a combination of coconut oil, olive oil, shea butter. If you want a very cleansing soap bath, you will increase the concentration of coconut oil. If you want a very conditioning soap bar that is suitable for sensitive skin, you will increase the concentration of olive oil, and so on. How to avoid trace acceleration. So we talked here about the importance of temperature. How to make scent long lasting. This is something that everyone has struggled with. And when it comes to scent, if you're using natural essential oils, then pairing with a base note like patchouli, vetiver, sandalwood, cedarwood, vanilla, these are all basically long lasting essential oils that make everything else more long lasting. Because, for example, Lychea cubeba that was used by Theodora is an amazing citrusy top note. And it's actually one of the most stable citrusy top notes. Citrusy top notes like Lychea cubeba, bergamot, lime, lemon, grapefruit, sweet orange essential oil, they all have one thing in common, is that they have a high concentration of limonene, and they tend to degrade. They tend to degrade faster than usual. They tend to evaporate really, really fast, and they also tend to degrade in a soap-making environment that is of a high pH and high temperature. So in order to make them more long-lasting, you pair them with a base note like patchouli or vetiver essential oil. And then we talked about dreaded orange spots. As you remember, dreaded orange spots looks like that. It's basically when your oils oxidize. Then we made hand cream live. We talked there about the importance of temperature, about the importance of heat-sensitive compounds, and of course, Q&A, live recipe feedback. We did all this, and it was amazing. Wow, I love Litzerk Beba. But bear in mind, every time you open the bottle, oxygen goes in. And when oxygen goes in, that basically increases oxidation of limonene. That is the main compound in Litzerk Beba and other citrusy top notes. So if you buy citrusy top notes and you open the bottle, make sure to actually use them in the next few months, because after 6 to 9 months, the scent will have degraded. So it doesn't stay that intense the moment you open it. And the way they store these citrusy top notes, like trusted soap making suppliers, the way they store it is that they store it in nitrogen, actually, because nitrogen is basically a gas that does not react with anything. It does not have any oxygen inside, so they just store it in nitrogen gas so that limonene is preserved and it doesn't get oxidized. Cool. And then we said that always, when in doubt, make sure to check the fatty acid profile of your oils. Olive oil, for example, is high in oleic acid and low in linoleic acid. That's what we want, because oleic acid is what gives conditioning. Linoleic acid also gives conditioning, but it's what leads to dreaded orange spots, which is not what we desire. Then we have coconut oil, which is high in lauric and myristic acid. When they react with lye, they produce sodium laurate and sodium myristate, and those are what adds bubbles to your soap. And bear in mind that a dish soap that is made with 100% coconut oil, the reason why it doesn't clog the drain is because there is no coconut oil left in the soap. It's all saponified. You have saponified coconut oil, and saponified coconut oil is very water soluble, so that's why it doesn't clog the drains and the pipes. We talked about the 4 categories of oils that you need to make soap: conditioning, cleansing, creaminess, and thickness. We talked about the importance of temperature and mixing, and so on. Cool. So let's go ahead and start with the basically 31 reflections that I have from soap making. And I put this down the past few days. And let's begin. So, are you guys ready? Happy birthday in 3 days. Thank you so much, Naila. Thank you. Comment yes if you're ready to go further. What is the difference between refined and unrefined shea butter? That's a really good question. So refined shea butter is basically shea butter that has been processed so that it doesn't have this intense scent. So unrefined shea butter, raw unrefined shea butter, the consistency of unrefined shea butter changes batch to batch. Some batches are not that smelly. Other batches can have a very strong scent. Some people are quite okay with it. I'm not that big of a fan with it, because once I made soap with unrefined shea butter, I even added a strong scent, and the unrefined shea butter overpowered my scent. And it smelled very earthy and farmy, and I didn't really like it. And therefore, I only use refined shea butter, because you can still find organic refined shea butter. Cool. Let's go ahead with the 31 lessons, 31 reflections that can help you basically, that can inspire you basically, and can be of value to you today. So, reflection number 1, you don't need 100 different ingredients to make soap. And this is quite a game changer, because we always think that the more oils we have, the more advanced soap makers we are. Actually, that's not true. The less oils you can work with, the more advanced soap maker you are, because it means that you really understand your oils, you really understand how to tweak the ratios to create a completely new product. And a very simple example is basically when you have this one here. Let me just show you this. So a very typical example of why you don't need 100 different oils to make soap is that, as you know, we have 4 categories of oil: conditioning oils, we have cleansing oils, oils that add creaminess and hardness, and oils that add a lather boost and richness to your lather. So if we take, for example, the oils that add conditioning properties to your lather, you will see that basically all you need is olive oil and maybe also high oleic sunflower oil. Everything else is either, for example, very high in linoleic acid, leading to dreaded orange spots, like grapeseed oil, pumpkin seed oil, which is also very expensive. So not only do you pay a lot of money to buy pumpkin seed oil, but you also pay for something that will cause dreaded orange spots, or rosehip oil, for example. And then you have oils that are high in oleic acid and low in linoleic acid, like olive oil, but they're more expensive than olive oil. For example, avocado oil is high in oleic, low in linoleic, but is 2 times more expensive than olive oil. And it doesn't add any extra value to your soap compared to olive oil. The same with macadamia oil. And as you know, all the vitamins and antioxidants that exist in avocado or macadamia oil, they're usually degraded in a high pH and high temperature environment of soap making. And also, one thing here is that soap making and other skincare products are completely different. So soap making involves a chemical reaction, while other skincare products like lip balm and deodorant, they do not involve a chemical reaction and they do not have a high pH. Therefore, using avocado oil in a lip balm is different, is actually not the same as using olive oil in a lip balm. So there you actually have the extra properties of avocado oil, the extra antioxidants. But in a soap making environment, of course, it's quite different, because there you have a chemical reaction. So this is what I mean, that you don't need 100 different ingredients to make soap. You just need to understand the fatty acid profile, which fatty acids are actually necessary and which are not. And then you will find out that you need very, very few ingredients. Cool. Let's go to the second one. And the second one has to do with transformation. I was asking myself, what exactly are we doing here? What exactly is soap making? And I realized that soap making is the science of transformation. You really take something, oils, and you transform it into something completely new. You take oils like olive oil, coconut oil, shea butter, castor oil, beef tallow, and you transform them to the saponified version of those. You take something that is greasy and oily on the skin, and you transform it to something that bubbles and that is cleansing and that cleans and that is water soluble. Because oil on itself is not water soluble, but by mixing it with lye, basically it converts to something called soap. And that's what's fascinating about soap making, and what's completely different than other skincare products. So we are the science of transformation completely. Lesson number 3, soap making feels like meditation. This is more of a personal one, and comment yes if you actually feel the same, because every time I make soap, I feel like I'm really relaxing. I feel like my mind basically goes away. I forget about problems, or I forget if I've been tired during the day or upset during the day. It just makes me feel like very relaxed, and it really transforms my mood. Just like we are transforming oils into soap, soap making really transforms my emotions and my mood. And that's why what I love about it. It feels like meditation to me. And I can see here in the comments, a lot of people say yes. So I'm glad to hear that you guys have the same experience with that. Number 4 lesson: exotic sounding oils do not add any extra value to your soap. Let me just read the comments. Soap making and cooking. I prefer the soap making cleanup though, and smelling like soap. Yes, exactly. Soap making and cooking. Uh, it's very stressful to me. I'm such a newbie and make a lot of mistakes. I also understand that it can be stressful if you're working with certain essential oils, certain fragrance oils that could add trace acceleration. If you're working with certain recipes, for example, that do not have the right amount of lye concentration, the right amount of superfat, and can lead to problems early on. So I totally get that. But that's why we're here, to not make it stressful and to actually make it joyful and relaxing. So exotic sounding oils do not add any extra value to your soap. This is very crucial. As I showed you before, we have grapeseed oil, rosehip oil, um, all this pumpkin seed oil, rice bran oil, all these oils that have basically very high concentration of linoleic acid and do not really, they add more problems than benefits to your soap, just to put it in simple terms. Then temperature. Temperature is key for troubleshooting, especially when you're making cold process soap and you're working with, for example, juices or milks. You always need to freeze those first before you add the lye. When you're working with essential oils that can accelerate trace, when you want to have control over your soap butter, you want to mix your lye solution and oil solution at low similar temperature, around 30, 32 degrees Celsius, to make sure that you have as much control as possible of your soap butter and it doesn't solidify really, really fast. Then mixing. Mixing is another part of troubleshooting. And of course, you have to mix very well so that your oils and lye solution emulsify together and they become one. Because if you don't mix well, you will get separation, you will get partial saponification, and that's quite problematic. You will get areas in your soap that are humid, where lye and oils have not reacted well together. But if you mix too much, you will end up having basically a thick trace, and that could lead to trace acceleration fast. So always mix enough so that you reach a light trace, which basically looks like a heavy cream, but not too much. My biggest issue with creating my own recipes is figuring out how much lye and water to use. Thank you, Carmen. That's very important. So it depends on what recipe you are making. Let's take an example. Let's say you're making a dish soap. So dish soap is a soap that has a very high concentration of coconut oil. So there you can use 33% lye concentration, meaning that 33% of your lye solution will be lye, and the rest, basically 67%, will be water. And the superfat there is important. You have to use 0% superfat, or I like to put 0.3, but 0% also works, because you don't want it to have superfat. You want to be super cleansing for the dishes. So 33% is typical for a dish soap. Now, what you can do is that when you make normal recipes, you can also go up to 35%. And when you make certain unique recipes like Himalayan salt soap, you actually have to reduce the lye concentration by a lot. Why is that? So let's take the example of Himalayan salt soap. Himalayan salt soap has, let's say you add 10% salt, and then you have to increase the concentration of coconut oil. Salt, what it does is that it adds hardness, but at the same time it reduces lather. And because it reduces lather, you have to increase coconut oil concentration. So you increase coconut oil concentration, and so you have both a high concentration of coconut oil and you also have a high concentration of salt. Those two together, especially the salt one, can lead to your soap batter thickening up very, very fast, especially because of the salt you add. And in order to avoid basically the trace acceleration, you have to lower your lye concentration a lot. So I use 20% lye concentration for my Himalayan salt soap. I know it sounds very low, but it's what helps me basically work very safely and have perfect control over my soap batter. So I don't have any problems with trace acceleration, thickening, or anything. Now, because like 20% lye concentration means that you have 20% lye, 80% water, so you have more water than usual, it also means that you have to let your soap cure for 2 weeks more. So you will leave it for 6 weeks instead of 4 weeks, because now you have added extra water. So that's an example of how you can work with the lye concentration. But what if your oil's butter, like refined, say, harden if you bring the temperature too low? Yes, that's a really good thing. So shea butter does not, if you use, let's say, 50% or if you use less than, I usually use like 25% shea butter, it never solidifies at 32 degrees Celsius. So you won't have problems with solidified shea butter at this temperature. Unless you go down to 28 degrees, 27 degrees, and then you might have problems. And then you just need to reheat it a bit. Thanks, and thank you for always explaining. Soap skin cleaning is necessary for good health life, like ants. Ants rub antifungal, antibacterial compounds on their bodies inside the nests, even if they don't, they perish. Our bodies are very similar. Yes, that is true. The dish soap produces a lot of white liquid, soap scum, visible as white droplets on the glass or on stainless steel as it dries. Is there a way to fix it? Perhaps citric acid to 2-3%. Absolutely, yes. So my recipe of dish soap contains citric acid exactly for that. So you can add 2-3% citric acid. Bear in mind that if you add citric acid reacts with sodium hydroxide. So whenever you add citric acid, you have to add some extra sodium hydroxide. So for every 1 gram of citric acid you add 0.62 grams of extra sodium hydroxide. So let's say that you have your normal amount of sodium hydroxide and you decided to add citric acid of 2 grams. Then you have to add 2 times 0.62, which is 1.24 grams of extra sodium hydroxide. And in order to have your soap recipe completely balanced. And citric acid helps with soap scum. I think my mistake was I heated up the shea butter separately and I added it to the colder oils. It started flaking up even at 39-40 degrees Celsius. Should I melt it all together? So I usually melt the shea butter together with my coconut oil. And once shea butter and coconut oil are melted, I add my liquid oil, which is olive oil and castor oil, and that works perfectly fine. I don't have any problems with basically shea butter solidifying there. Made soap for the first time yesterday. I had help, but it was stressful. The weight of not wanting to mess it up was heavier than I anticipated, but I have to say I really enjoyed it. That's great to hear, Catherine. What soap did you make? Cool. Let's go to the next one. Olive oil. Olive oil basically conditions. Olive oil adds conditioning properties to your lather because it has a high concentration of oleic acid. Coconut oil bubbles. Coconut oil has a high concentration of lauric acid, and it's what leads to bubbles once it reacts with lye. But at the same time, coconut oil can be drying for the skin. And that's why you have to make sure that if you're making soap for sensitive skin, then you have to minimize or remove coconut oil completely. Then lesson number 10, community gives meaning to life. This is what I've understood the past few times ever since I started this YouTube channel, is that I love having a community. I love having, the whole thing with YouTube and TikTok is that I get to meet people like you, both online and offline in physical workshops. And we get to create a community where we talk about soap and skincare making. And community is very important in life. So I'm very grateful for this YouTube community that we have created here. Okay, let me read your comments. Is there a maximum percentage of citric acid that I shouldn't exceed? So I typically add 1 to 2%. You don't need more than that. You can also go up to 3%, but 2% I think is enough to do the work. How do you get enough palmitic acid without something like palm oil? What an amazing question. This is very, very great question, and I will answer it right away because it involves formulation. So let me just go and look at fatty acid profile. So we go to category 3 oils, and we will look that palm oil is high in palmitic acid. But let's say that we don't want to use palm oil. Then we have other alternatives. Cocoa butter, as you will see, has a very high concentration of palmitic acid. And it also has a high concentration of oleic and stearic acid. So cocoa butter is actually a great butter. It's because of stearic acid, it leads to a creamy lather. Because of oleic acid, it leads to a conditioning lather. And because of palmitic acid, it leads to a very stable and long-lasting lather. So there are people who make soap with 100% cocoa butter because it's a great butter to have. There are people who make soap with 100% beef tallow. It's also very similar to cocoa butter, as you will see. It has stearic, palmitic, and oleic acid. It has a higher concentration of oleic acid than cocoa butter, so it's more conditioning than cocoa butter. But there are not a lot of people who make soap with 100% shea butter because shea butter has a high concentration of unsaponifiables, meaning substances that do not saponify well. So you could make soap with 100% shea butter, but it might feel slightly sticky. Hope I answered your question. I'm in a tropical country, Sri Lanka. When I make salt soaps, it covers with water droplets when curing. What's wrong with this? That's very interesting. Is this something that happens only with salt soaps, or does it also happen with normal soaps? And salt soaps, they tend to have a high water content. As I said before, when we add salt, the soap hardens a lot. And in order basically to avoid any trace acceleration and have control over our soap butter, we have to have a very low lye concentration. So we have 20% lye, which means that we have a very high concentration of water in our lye solution. And that means that we have to let it cure for slightly longer because there is more water and more water needs to evaporate. So, but I'm interested to know if it's only in salt soaps or if it's in other soaps as well. One of the best things about soap and skincare product making is community. Yes, absolutely agree. Cool. So we cover the first 10. Let's go to the next 10 reflections and lessons that I have from soap making and that can hopefully to you today. Cool. Shea butter, as we just mentioned, shea butter adds creaminess to your lather and castor oil adds thickness to your lather. Number 13, everything feels easier when you think about adding value to people. This is something that I've learned when I started looking at your comments, when I started looking at how do I solve the biggest pain points in soap making, when I started basically trying to see how I can add value, things felt easier. Basically, how to help in the best possible way. Number 14, starting a business is hard. So make sure at least you love what you do. Because if you start a business without loving what you do, then it's going to be even harder. I know this is so simple thing to say, and I know it sounds very simple, but it's true. So starting a business is very, very hard. You have to deal with a lot of different things that you don't plan on doing. So when I started my own soap making business, I thought all I would do was to make soap. But in reality, I was doing basically 20% soap making and 80% other things. 80% was doing things like marketing, photography, accounting, building a website. So all packaging is a big one, trust me. So all of these things that I didn't have expertise on, I had to work on. And I did very minimal soap making because I had to deal with a lot of other stuff. Only salt soap, that's very interesting. We soap makers are artisan. Life is art, survival is creativity, good health is love. Yes, beautifully said. Many soap makers also incorporate steep water discounts. You mean high water discounts? So basically, high lye concentration, like 35, 40%, or what exactly do you mean? As I can't find beef tallow at a good price, which generally seems to be more highly regarded and recommended by soap makers, I'm often using lard. Is there really that much of a difference? So beef tallow and lard are very similar, but lard has a higher concentration of oleic acid, making it more conditioning than beef tallow, while beef tallow has slightly more palmitic acid, leading to a more stable lather. But they're very, very similar. This is like literally tiny differences. Lard and beef tallow are very similar. And if beef tallow is expensive, a lot of people buy beef tallow from the butcher and they render it themselves. If you buy it straight from the butcher, it's almost free, basically. It doesn't really cost much. And then if you render it yourself at home, then you basically avoid all the big price of rendered beef tallow. Does adding a small amount of beeswax help prevent soda ash or just a water discount? And how much of a discount? Thank you. Beeswax, no, I haven't heard of beeswax actually have anything to do with soda ash. So soda ash, how it's basically it's created by having your lye, or basically sodium hydroxide that hasn't yet reacted into soap, reacting with carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and basically creating baking soda. That's what soda ash is. That's why it looks white. It's basically something that resembles baking soda. So the best way to avoid soda ash is by proper insulation. So when you insulate your soap correctly, and you don't allow any air during the insulation process, then you also don't allow any carbon dioxide to react with remaining lye, and that basically removes the problem completely. Now, if you mix also well, if you mix your oils and lye solution well enough and you really reach light trace, you also make sure that all lye has been reacted and no lye is left in your soap to react with sodium hydroxide and create soda ash. Hello, Perry. We don't need olive oil to make soap. Yes, you need olive oil if you want to make soap that is conditioning, but you can still make soap with 100% beef tallow or 100% lard or 100% cocoa butter, because those contain a high concentration of oleic acid, and oleic acid is basically the acid that exists in olive oil. And so beef tallow has properties, the same similar properties as olive oil, because it's highly conditioning, and it also has stearic and palmitic acid that makes it give creaminess to your lather and add structure. The kind of soap I made was rosehip, jasmine, cedar, and eucalyptus. Just regular hand soap, higher in tallow than other oils. Castor, coconut, and olive oil. That's a great combination. Yes, decrease in water, so that in essence results in higher lye concentration. Yes, some people do that as well, especially if you want to have a higher trace faster. So the higher the lye concentration, the faster you're gonna reach trace. The faster you're gonna reach trace, and that could be problematic because that could lead to trace acceleration. Some people like to do that because it means that you have less water and you need to cure your soap slightly less. So eventually it will lead to a harder bar because you have less water, and you might just need to cure it for 3 to 4 weeks instead of 5 to 6 weeks. So in the end, it's up to you, but it adds a level of risk to increase your lye concentration, especially if you're planning to split your batches to add colorants, to add essential oils, because then you might not have time to work through it and to have perfect control over your soap butter. I have been rendering my own tallow. I can make sure I know how clean and pure it is. It is a process to render the tallow, but it's worth it. Yes. I recently used lavender, cypress, rosemary. All essential oils, amazing scent. Yes. You could also add a bit of base note to make it more long-lasting. I'm using sodium lactate. Can I replace it with something else? You can also use sodium chloride, basically simple salt. I guess you use a bit of sodium lactate, like 1 teaspoon, something like that, right? 1 teaspoon per pound of oils, or how much do you use? Thank you, Perry. I'm your biggest fan here in the Philippines. Thank you. Brain rot, that sounds like it smells fantastic. Just my personal view, some would avoid using lard due to religious preferences. Yes, of course. Let's go to the next two. Essential oils are natural, complex, and they evaporate easily. Fragrance oils are stable and long-lasting, but they're synthetic. At the same time, essential oils can be very expensive, while fragrance oils can be very, very cheap. And fragrance oils are designed specifically for soap making. So if you're new to soap making and you don't know what fragrance oil to choose, always choose fragrance oils that do not contain any phthalates or parabens, because those are hormonal disruptors and you don't want them in your soap. So you want to make sure that they don't contain any of these. And if you're fine with that, then you should know that fragrance oils are much cheaper and more long-lasting than essential oils. At the same time, essential oils are natural. They're very complex, very rich, but they evaporate easily. So if you're planning to use essential oils, make sure to pair them with a proper base note like patchouli or vetiver to make them more long-lasting. Number 17, you don't need essential oils or fragrance oils to make soap. You heard that right. You can make soap without any scent. You don't need scent to make soap. A lot of people I see get very, very interested in the in the scent part, and they feel like they have to add scent, but you don't have to add scent. The most popular soaps in the world, like the Aleppo soap, the Marseille soap, the Castille soap, they don't include any essential oils. They're basically oils and lye and water, just that. So, and soap itself actually has a scent on its own. It has like the scent of soap, as I called it. It smells like soap. And honestly, the scent of soap is quite pleasant to me. So you don't necessarily need essential oils to make soap. You also don't need coconut oil to make soap. We think that coconut oil is necessary because coconut oil adds bubbles. But guess what? You can still make soap with 100% olive oil, like the Marseille soap. You can still make soap with 75% olive oil and 25% shea butter, or 100% cocoa butter. It's just, it will lead to a different quality of soap. It will lead to a more conditioning soap, a more conditioning lather, suitable for sensitive skin. But it just won't bubble that much. But you can still do it. Lesson number 19. 100% olive oil soap needs minimum 6 months to cure. And this is because olive oil, once it converts to sodium oolate, which is the saponified version, it takes a lot of time to create beautiful soap crystals. Oleic acid is a very long molecule, and it just takes a lot of time to arrange into beautiful crystals that will make a beautiful soap. If you use it before that, then basically you will need to, if you use olive oil soap before that, it will feel very mushy and very slimy in the shower, and it will melt very quickly. It won't be as long lasting. 100% tallow soap needs 4 to 6 weeks to cure. I put here 6 weeks, but 4 weeks could also be perfectly fine. This is just to show you that the difference in ingredients can lead to different curing time. So olive oil needs minimum 6 months to cure, but beef tallow or cocoa butter will need 4 to 6 weeks to cure. That's because it's a different type of molecule that doesn't need that long amount of curing. And before we go to the next one, the final 10 lessons, I just want to say thank you to all the people who have who are part of the private community of the video course and the Soap Hub. I've been getting a lot of comments lately from people saying that they have transformed their soap making. And as you know, I have June 24th, I'm turning 31, and I'm having my full video course plus Soap Hub access at 31% off just for 2 days. And in order to claim your offer, you have to sign up to the wait list, which is in the description below. And the offer lasts for 48 hours. So it starts June 24th and June 25th. And you get access to 20 video lessons on soap and skincare making, access to Soap Hub, which is basically the soap making tool that I have created, and access to the private community of soap makers. Cool. Let me read your comments. Hello, Perry. I'm a new soap maker. I mixed dipropylene glycol with fragrance oil, and my butter seized and became stone. I was using dipropylene glycol for fixing the fragrance of the soap. Should I use it? So, what else did your fragrance oil contain, and what made you choose dipropylene glycol? Because it could be something in your fragrance oil that led to trace acceleration. Fragrance oils could contain vanillin, cinema aldehyde, substances that really lead to trace acceleration. So it's not necessarily the dipropylene glycol that led to trace acceleration, but it could be something on your fragrance sole. But why would you use dipropylene glycol in the first place? Because fragrance soles are made this way so that you don't need to use dipropylene glycol yourself. You can just use the fragrance sole directly. 2% sodium lactate. Yes, that's fine. So you add sodium lactate that leads to a harder type of soap. You can sodium chloride, basically salt, would do the same job, the same exact job as sodium lactate. But these are optional. You don't need to add them. If you have the right oil formulation where you include the right amount of soap that add hardness and structure, like shea butter, beef tallow, cocoa butter, lard, and so on, your soap will end up being super. It will be great. It will have the desired hardness, so you won't need to add any sodium lactate. If 100% tallow needs 6 weeks, 50% needs 12 weeks, no, not necessarily. It depends on how much olive oil you add. The olive oil is usually the one that needs a lot of curing. So if you have a concentration of olive oil higher than 50%, I usually say 50, 60%, I usually say you should cure it for minimum 6 months. But if you have 50% tallow, 30%, 20% coconut oil, 5% castor oil, and 25% olive oil, you just cure it for 4 to 6 weeks. At the very base level, soap is to get dirt, bacteria off our skin. Most of what we put in soap end up down the drain. Simple is best. Soap is still just a tool. Yes, that's true. A lot of the ingredients that we use, soap is a rinse off product, meaning that you rinse it off your skin. So a lot of the ingredients we have, they don't stay on the soap. I remember you mentioned in one of your videos that we shouldn't do more than 6% castor oil. Is that true? Yes, for normal type of soap, I use 5 to 6%. Castor oil is high in ricinoleic acid. Ricinoleic acid adds a lot of thickness. Like castor oil is very thick, very, if you see it, it has very high viscosity compared to other oils. And it leads to a very thick lather. That means it can also lead to a very sticky lather. So if you add too much castor oil, it will drag down the lather, it will make it slightly sticky. So 5-6% is ideal. Just my opinions, after 25 years of soap making, I have come to this way of thinking. That's true. 25 years, and that's a lot. I Google sodium chloride as a replace to sodium lactate. It says that it makes the soap brittle, crumbly, less foamy, dehydrates the hair by stripping the oils in the soap. What is true? That's a really good point. It all depends on what concentration of sodium chloride you are using. It's true. If you use a high concentration of sodium chloride, it will lead to a soap that brittles and it's very crumbly. That's why when you make Himalayan salt soap that has 10% salt, you actually have to insulate it you have to leave it in the mold for maximum 6 hours. Because if you leave it longer, you won't be able to cut the soap. Once you cut it, it will just break into pieces. It will be very crumbly and brittle and hard. So it all depends on the amount of sodium chloride you are using. And for the hair, I wouldn't recommend using soap for the hair, especially I wouldn't recommend using salt soap, like Himalayan salt soap for the hair. So soap in general is something of high pH. It's an alkaline product. It has a pH of 9 to 10. If you use it on your hair continuously for a long period of time, it can dry out the scalp. That's why basically shampoo is pH balanced, and shampoo bars, as I always mention in the past, and the ones that I make, they are pH balanced to 4.5 pH, which is the same as you have in your scalp, and that's why they don't dry out the skin. A lot of people that use soap to wash their hair, then they have to rinse their hair with vinegar water. Vinegar is acidic, and the reason you do that is to bring down the pH to an acidic value so that your scalp does not get dehydrated. Let's go to lesson number 21. I'm bald. I only have bad eyebrow days. Oh, yeah. Apple cider vinegar is wonderful for a rinse. Yeah, actually, my grandmother used to wash this way. A lot of people still do. Uh, Basically, they wash with cold process soap, but then you have to use apple cider vinegar afterwards, diluted with water, of course, um, in order to bring down and balance the pH. So, lesson number 21. With only 4 oils, you can create every soap product you want. And this is very, very important, especially for people who have spent so much money on different oils and different ingredients. As you saw before, I got a message from someone who spent $1,500 on oils and ingredients for soap making, which is a huge amount if you think about it. So, with only 4 oils, olive oil is the conditioning oil that I like to use. Coconut oil is the cleansing oil that I like to use. Shea butter or beef tallow is the oil that adds creaminess and structure. And then castor oil is the oil that adds thickness to your lather. With those 4, you can create anything from normal soap, sensitive skin soap, body soap, face soap, shaving soap, dish soap. Every soap you have in your basically agenda, you can create with those 4 oils: conditioning oil, cleansing oil that adds creaminess, and oil that adds thickness. Those 4 categories. Lesson number 22. Hard and long lasting is not the same thing. Just because your soap is hard, it does not mean that it's long lasting. This is very, very, very important. When you make dish soap, as Theodora made and some other people in the chat made recently, you will find out that it's an extremely hard soap. It's very, 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 very hard. It also hardens so fast when you pour it into the mold because of coconut oil. But that does not mean that it's a long-lasting soap. Coconut oil is at the same time extremely water-soluble. It's what creates a lot of bubbles and cleansiness. And the fact that it's so water-soluble is what actually makes it not very long-lasting. The fact that I can use my dish soap for minimum 3-4 months is a different story, but it's coconut oil on itself is not a long-lasting. It's not an oil that leads to a long-lasting soap. It's an oil that leads to a hard soap, but it's also extremely water-soluble. So that does not make it long-lasting. At the same time, you have certain butters like shea butter or beef tallow, and those really add long-lasting properties to your lather, really make your soap long-lasting. So if you want a soap that lasts very long, you should incorporate oils like cocoa butter, shea butter, beef tallow, lard, and so on. Can you make soap less alkaline? Yes, it's quite difficult. I've tried making soap less alkaline. You cannot make it, if you reduce the alkalinity, the reaction will not happen. So soap in itself is alkaline. In order for the saponification to happen, you have to have high pH. So I've tried to reduce the pH a bit in the past, but it's extremely difficult and you cannot reduce it much. You can get it down to 8.5, so it will still be very basic and alkaline. Reflection number 22 is the mistake I used to make in my thinking, that a hard bar of soap meant long-lasting soap. Yes, that's quite important. What's the difference between a face soap and a body soap? That's a really good question. Face soap is basically something that you are going to use on your face, so you have to make sure it's not too cleansing, because if it's too cleansing, it will dry out your face. So the face skin is more sensitive than your arms, for example. So for a face bar, I recommend something that does not contain coconut oil or does not contain a lot of coconut oil, because coconut oil can be too drying and it could basically dry out your face completely. Unless you're planning to do some sort of an exfoliating face care routine, I don't know, then maybe it also depends on your goal. But as a rule, I always make sure that the face bar is not too cleansing, so it's not very harsh for the skin. This information is why I came to this channel. Complex information made easy, thanks to Perry. Thank you so much. My grandma always used bar soap to wash her hair, followed with vinegar rinse. But we thought that was because the vinegar strengthened and also made her hair shine. Yes, I think vinegar does make your hair, does add conditioning properties to your hair and makes them shine. But the primary reason is to protect your scalp, actually. Number 23. Unrefined shea butter can leave a strong scent to your soap. This we already discussed. Number 24, commercial liquid soap is not real soap. Yes, like commercial liquid soap is not real soap. Like most commercial soap is actually a mixture of detergents and surfactants like sodium lauryl sulfate. So they do not come from the typical saponification reaction of oils and lye equals soap. It also depends on where you are in the world. In the US, they have very strict regulation on that. They say something can only be called soap if it comes from the saponification reaction. But in Europe, it's a different story. In Europe, like companies are allowed to call things soap, even though they include surfactants and detergents, synthetic surfactants and detergents, and they do not come from the saponification reaction. So always make sure to check your ingredients. So commercial solid soap is usually made with palm oil and palm kernel oil. And this is, of course, because palm oil is one of the most popular ingredients in soap making, but it's also linked to sustainability problems, and that's why a lot of people are now basically not using it at all, and they have replaced palm oil with other things. So, but a lot of commercial solid soaps still use it because palm oil is high in palmitic acid, and it leads to a stable, long-lasting, and creamy lather. And they also use palm kernel oil because palm kernel oil is high in lauric acid, and it leads to a more cleansing and bubbly lather. And the funny thing that I've noticed actually recently is that expensive commercial soap is actually really cheap to make. And I made a YouTube video where I looked at the ingredients of very popular soaps like the Chanel No. 5 soap, Klaus Porto soap, that have very unique fragrances and beautiful fragrances. But the oils they use is palm oil and palm kernel oil. So they're very cheap to make, actually. I even made a cost analysis on how much the ingredients cost to make. So of course you don't pay for the ingredients, but you pay for the basically the time they put in to make the beautiful fragrance, the process itself, and the heritage, basically. Back in the day, they used soap to wash their hair too. That's we also basically we discussed. Back in the day, they used to make soap with wood ash. So that's also very typical, and that's because wood ash contains another form of lye called potassium hydroxide, not sodium hydroxide. And potassium hydroxide leads to a softer type of soap and to a liquid soap. So that's how they made soap back in the day. They basically mixed water with wood ash and they filtered it out to basically take a highly concentrated solution of lye, which was not pure, by the way. It's not like today where we have pure lye. Lesson 29, essential oils become long-lasting mainly by using a base note, as we discussed before. Oils are acidic, lye is basic, soap is a salt, and that's why it's water soluble. That's also beautiful because, again, chemistry is like acid plus base equals soap, equals salt. And that's the reason why oils basically are not water soluble, but once they react with lye, they become something water soluble. And lesson 31, this is the last lesson. Soap making awakens my creative side. I don't know about you guys. Please comment below. What do you think about that? If you think soap making also awakens your creative side, but when you have to think of what oils to use, what essential oils, what scent, what colorants to use, I think it really feels very creative. And usually on my everyday full-time job as a fermentation scientist, I tend to manage things instead of being creative. Of course there is creativity, but there is more basically execution and managing. And when I come home and I make soap, I feel like my creative side is basically awakened, and it's one of the things that I love most about soap making. Okay, Perry, from my work, they gave me 30 liters of palm oil. Should I use it? Yes, I mean, palm oil is a great oil. It's so the only problem with palm oil, of course, is sustainability. But if you have it, you should definitely use it. It leads to a really, really great soap. Palm oil is high in oleic, in stearic, and palmitic acid, and it leads to a very beautiful lather. You can make soap with palm oil and coconut oil. And so you will have both the conditioning, the creamy and the long-lasting aspect of palm oil, and you will add coconut oil for a bit of bubbles and cleansiness. So Nico, you should definitely use it, and you will make a beautiful soap. And 30 liters is a lot, so you could even use it for a hand cream. I know, Nico, you're part of my private community and video course. And if you check the hand cream recipe, you could even replace the shea butter with palm oil, and you will still make an amazing hand cream. And you can, as you remember, you can adjust it also for face cream as well, or for foot cream. So you can make this with palm oil. So you can use it for many different things, not only soap. Mine too, thinking about the recipe, about the next recipe too. What about liquid soap making? Yes, liquid soap requires the use of potassium hydroxide. Potassium hydroxide leads to liquid soap, while sodium hydroxide leads to solid soap. I would use tallow, palm olive, and castor oil all the time. Yes, palm oil and tallow are very, very similar because they both have a high concentration of oleic, palmitic, and stearic acid. I love making soap because I get to use my creative energy, both artistic and logically. Yes, agree. I totally agree. I love how it combines art with science. Very similar to baking. Yes, similar to baking. Soaping is creative and very satisfying to give handcrafted gifts. Yes, it's amazing to give gifts to make soap and give it as a gift, actually. Not sure if anyone has asked this. However, besides cold process Castile soap 100% olive oil, would all soaps need to be cured for 4 to 6 weeks? And does this time frame also apply to hot process soap? So if you're making hot process soap, you actually do not need to cure it for 4 to 6 weeks. It's basically ready the next day. During hot process soap, you apply heat for the saponification to happen, and at the same time, because you apply heat, a lot of water evaporates. So you have soap basically ready the next day. If you leave it for a few more days, maybe some excess water that did not evaporate during the hot process method might evaporate and lead to a harder soap, but you can still use it basically the next day. So hot process is much faster than cold process, but I still prefer cold process because it leads to better colors. It leads to a better scent throw. It leads to a more smoother design, actually, that looks very beautiful than hot process, in my opinion. I know people that like just to make hot process, and that's totally fine. And it's mainly soaps that have a high concentration of olive oil that need minimum 6 months of curing. The rest, typically, they need 4 to 6 weeks. Perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Perry, if I'm making soap using only palm and coconut oil, high percentages for the coconut oil, and would you still add some castor oil? So castor oil is, of course, great to have. It's not a must, but it's great to have. So Theodora, let's say that we want to make soap with palm oil, coconut oil, and castor oil. For this, I would use around 75% palm oil, 20% coconut oil, and 5% castor oil. That will lead to an amazing conditioning, cleansing, stable lather. And 20% coconut oil is perfect. It's not too cleansing, but it's still enough to create beautiful bubbles. 75% palm oil will give a lot of oleic acid, a lot of palmitic and stearic acid that will add creaminess and structure and a stable lather. I mean, some people even make soap with 100% palm oil, right? So 75% is perfect. And then 20% coconut oil and 5% castor oil. That's how I will make it. I'm glad to find you because you are the only one that explains the science behind skincare making. Thank you. I like that there's less weight with hot process. Cold is definitely prettier and easier to work with though. Exactly. That's true. Thank you, Carmen. And it makes it easy, not complicated. Yes. So you can see the designs, for example, of cold process soap. The colors are usually much better, and it leads to a much better basically design overall than hot process. Thank you so much, guys, for this live. I really enjoyed the 3 live masterclasses, and I'm really looking forward to the next one. I will let you know when I'm gonna do another masterclass. And again, these are the 31 lessons, and I hope these lessons could add some value to you today. They could inspire you, and hopefully you could find them relatable and educational in some way. And as you could see, my lessons are not only of soap making and educational value, but as you saw, it's also the fact that soap making feels like meditation. It's also the fact that soap making has given a community, and there is a beauty of having a community. So there are other things apart from the technical aspect of it that I love. And also the philosophy behind soap making is basically, for me, soap making is the science of transformation, because you take something, oils, and you transform it into something completely new. While you don't do that with other skincare products, you don't do that with lip balm. Lip balm, you take oils, beeswax, jojoba oil, shea butter, coconut oil, you melt them together and you make lip balm. They don't react, they don't transform into something new. You just have the oils in their original form, basically sitting together. But soap making is transformation. And the same way you transform your oils into something new, soap, I feel like you transform also your mood. You become more relaxed and more creative in the process. Thank you, Perry. I love your videos and all of the great information. You're a great presenter. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing knowledge and experience. I'm looking forward to the video course and joining your community of soap makers. Thank you, Theodora. It will open in 3 days, and as you all know, it's going to open June 24th and June 25th. You're all going to get an email. So people who have signed up on the wait list will get the 31% off offer, and then you get access to the Soap Hub, to 20 video lessons on soap and skincare making that cover anything from oil selection, scent, troubleshooting, and advanced soap making recipes. And then, of course, access to the private community. Your lives have been the most understandable and thoughtful layer out and thoroughly explained. I have truly enjoyed every one of them. Thank you, Perry, and fully enjoy your birthday. Thank you, Janelle. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Perry, for everything. I cannot wait to join. Enjoy your birthday week. Happy birthday. Same as my sisters. I will remember forever. Wow, that's amazing. I thank you so much. I really get excited when I find people who have the same birthday as me, because I've actually, I think I've only met maybe one person that had the same birthday as me back in university, but we were not even friends. We were just acquaintances, actually. Yeah, so I always get very happy if I meet people who have the same birthday as me. That's really cool. Have a happy and wonderful 31st birthday, and thank you so much for everything. Thank you so much. So let me just sharing my screen. Thank you, guys. I'll see you online, and I'll let you know when I'm gonna plan another live on YouTube, because I really enjoy having those lives together. Of all the excellent soap making channels available online, yours is the one I found most useful, informative, and to the point. Keep up the good work and have a great birthday. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm very grateful to hear that, and very much appreciate that. Thank you so much. I wish you all a great rest of the Sunday. Some of you, it's morning where you are. Some of you, like in Rome right now, I guess it's around 6:30. Here in Denmark, it's like 5:30 in the evening. But for the rest, have a great rest of the Sunday, and also have a great week ahead. Have an amazing birthday. Thank you, Carmen. So thank you all. Thank you all. God bless you. Thank you, guys. Have a great week ahead. Thank you for joining this live masterclass. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been amazing. Oh, it's 5:25. Okay, it's the same. Yes, you're right. Perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you. See you. God bless you. Bye-bye. Thank you a lot. Thank you for joining these lives. See you guys. Oh, yeah. Remember to like the video. Yes, of course. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.